Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Getting In, a College Coach Conversation. I am joined by my colleagues, Elizabeth Heaton and Karen Spencer. This morning, we are recording on what is actually the first day of spring here in the Northern Hemisphere, though this show will actually air next week. But for the first day of spring, we thought we would talk about nothing related to spring, but instead what's on everybody else's mind, which is the fact that at this point in time, schools are closed all over the country. Students are home. I know that both of my colleagues in their homes have students home with them, as do I. So we might have some people running through at some point in time. If that does happen, you know what? That's just the world now. So that's the way it's going to be. But we wanted to take this opportunity to talk to you all about some of the things that high school students especially can be doing, given the fact that they will not be in class for 2, 4, 6, 8 weeks. Who knows how long this may be. We've done a really nice job of internal brainstorming here on the College Coach team, and we wanted to share some ideas with all of you because I know that a lot of families out there are wondering, how do we help keep our students on track and support them with some of the interest that they have at this point in the process? Before we get into the segment, just a little housekeeping. We're recording this live on video as well, and we're going to be sharing this across some of our social media platforms. So if you're listening to us on the podcast or tuning in live for the radio show and you'd like to see what we look like, I think you should seek out those video segments because we've all used this as an opportunity to actually get dressed this morning. And I think
that was a big ask today, for the record.
That's right. Yes. And we look terrific. So go find those videos. We would love to have a chance to see you face to face, or for you to see us anyway. So first of all, I just want to start before we get into the segment. I want to ask you both, how are you doing? How is this going? You both have teenagers who are home, as do many of our listeners. So maybe I'll start with you, Karen. How's it going? How are you doing?
We're so far so good. I know you and I talked about this in online a bit. I think it's so far, we're 4 days in, actually 5 days. I live in Northern Virginia. We were out on Friday as well. So we've already are working on day 5 of being at home. And I think it's so far is good. We've been doing a really good job. Both my husband and I obviously work. So I think, as you see all those Facebook, like, oh, here's our schedule for the day. I'm like, that's great if somebody's got abundant free time to look at all of you all day. I do not have that. So we're trying to, I'm very good on controlling what's actually in your control and not spending a lot of your time and energy on things that I don't control. So that's kind of key, number one, which has always been my philosophy, but is particularly driven home this month so far. And the other thing is trying to give some structure to our day. So I can't do at 9, 10, 11 all the time, but we make a goal for the day of here's the things we are all going to accomplish today, right? You're going to take the dog for 2 30-minute walks. We just adopted a new dog. You will go outside for an hour. You will read for an hour. But when some of these things, for example, these get done, we have to be a little bit more flexible within our house with 2 working parents. It's sunny. And I will say it is mid-March with unseasonably warm weather, which is helping all of us out, I think.
Same here.
Particularly, if this was late November, you might be hearing a different tune from me right now. But
That's true. First day of spring is really nice. How about you, Beth? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm feeling, I think, everything that Karen said. But what's a little bit easier for me, Karen has 3 children at home. Ian, you have 2. I have 1, and he is almost 16. What's really great is that when he didn't have school on Friday, we both spoke about the fact that, it's not going to be possible to fill your days looking at your phone or being on Xbox. And he was totally on board with that. And so I had him come up with some things that he thought he could do during this downtime until we learn more from the school about what they might be doing. And I really let him put the schedule together because, as I have found both as a parent and sometimes as someone working with students, is if they have a say in it, it makes it much more likely that it's going to happen.
Yes.
So what he is, a couple of things he's working on, doing some stuff on Duolingo with French, and then reading. I think reading is so important. My son is not the reader that I am. I've accepted that as a fact. However, this is a great time to be doing more reading than maybe he normally would. And so we've identified 2 or 3 books that he's really interested in having time to read. And now he's got the time. So that's happening. And we've also injected a couple of fun things. So last couple of nights we played some chess together. We played Trouble, that awesome game. And so that's been fun.
That's great.
So those are just some of the things that we're instituting that I think are making being everyone in the same house. It's making it a little bit more livable. But we'll see. We're 5 days in.
Right. Yeah. Talk to me again in day 21.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
Right. That's right. Well, I do think
but
I love
I'm drinking while we're on this radio program at 2:00 in the afternoon.
That may very well happen. Yeah. I do appreciate that, both of you are talking about ways that you're integrating your kids into just different kinds of household management responsibilities, which I think is a big part of this is, not everybody is going to sit down and come up with an 8-3 curriculum that a student is going to be able to follow. I think that if you're setting yourself up with that expectation, you're very likely to fail within the first couple of days. It's just too hard to do. But I also think that students don't want to be in a position where they're looking at their phones or playing on Xbox. They're going to get bored of that really quickly. And they're looking for opportunities, I think, to grow and explore a little bit. And maybe there's some kind of silver lining in that you don't have quite a scheduled day. You're not going to school every day. There might be some opportunities to do some exploration that perhaps you haven't had a chance to look at before. So thinking especially about students who are 11th grade, 10th grade, 9th grade, what are some of the things that they might have an opportunity to do over this period in time? Karen, I think we talked a little bit offline about the role of testing, standardized testing, whether there's something that students can do in that avenue to get themselves in a good position. What are you thinking on that front?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the best ideas out there is for students, especially for students who haven't taken a test yet, and maybe they were meant to take the March SAT or the May SAT, both and ACT, both of which have been canceled. Now is a great time to take some practice tests, right? So first of all, if you're especially in your 10th and you were debating which tests to take, in your abundant free time you now have, which I realize, this does not sound super exciting, but I think would be to take a practice test in both, right? Take a full on timed, sit down, do the thing, make that environment as similar to the real environment as you can. Take the ACT, take the SAT, and then kind of see, okay, how did you feel about it? Some students will do much better naturally on one over the other. A lot of students will do about the same on both tests. They're still testing a similar body of knowledge, but even sometimes students who do similarly on both tests just prefer the feel of one of these tests over the other, right? So I'm a perfect example. I much preferred the ACT over the SAT. I did much better on the ACT than I did on the SAT. There are people who will feel the opposite of that, but that's for 10th graders, a great first start, and even for 11th graders. And maybe at that point you kind of already knew which test you wanted to take. Maybe it's not about an either or. But again, you've got to really find the opportunities where you can here. And this is an opportunity. Listen, you can take this practice test a few times and get really familiar with the test, really familiar with where you're not doing so hot, so you can spend some time doing that. So that would be one of the first things I would suggest.
Definitely. I like that. Beth, what about some sort of replication of curriculum? Do you think that students, especially those who haven't heard back from their schools yet, who are not being given homework assignments, homework packets, are there ways that they can continue to stay connected to the everyday expectations of the high school?
I mean, that's a little tricky. I think one of the things that my goals with my son was to say, what are some things that you can be doing that are things that will at least supplement what you might have been doing if you were in high school, or that you might do over the summer. Yeah. And so the Duolingo, that goal there is, I know that next year he's going to be in the honors level of French, and he was going to do an immersion program this summer. That's no longer going to happen. So Duolingo is an attempt to kind of help make sure that he's in a good position when school starts, hopefully as planned up again, either this year or next, that he's well positioned for that. The reading for me is a big thing. I think it's great test prep, A, and then B, I know that he's heard from his history teacher who put up a platform and said, hey, share any piece of news that you can find that doesn't relate to coronavirus, which I thought was kind of funny.
I couldn't even find a weather report. Right. I was like, my gosh.
I know.
Can't share this podcast.
Yes. Well, trust my football obsessed son has plenty of articles related to stupid trades that are being made and things like that. So he's all set to put some things up there. So I'm having him check the school platform on a regular basis. Like I said, with the reading, I would say that if, depending on what happens, I may bring in some tutoring with, for math. Maybe we'll check on Khan Academy to see what's available there just for free, see, how he can support that. So those are some of the things that I would recommend that teenagers could do. And I do think some kind of schedule. I will freely admit that we are in a pattern right now where he is getting up at 11, 12 o'clock in the morning and going to bed. Last night I said, what time did you go to bed last night? He said, I don't know, but like 1:50. I said, so 2 is really what you're saying. He's like, yeah. But, it's quiet around here during the day because my husband and I are both working from home. And I think it's not such a big deal for him to sleep late and then be more active when we're done with our work for the day. So, but he is on a schedule. It may not be the same as a school schedule, but he's still maintaining a schedule. And I think that's another important piece.
I don't think there's a good reason to stay connected to the old rules, unless it's something that works for your family. I mean, we get up and we walk the route to school every morning just as a way of getting our day going. And we need to, because both my wife and I work from home as well. And we've got younger kids, so they're up before we are anyway. It's also, I think, important, especially if you're parents of, someone who doesn't have any siblings. We set up a Zoom conference for Eli, my 5-year-old, and his kindergarten friends yesterday. And they had a little virtual play date for half an hour. And that was so great for him. He got to look forward to it all day. And I think, encouraging high school kids to do some FaceTime with each other, some actual conversations with each other, and to, potentially call other family members who are at this point also in self-isolation. It can be really nice to make that connection, to talk to different people. I think that's a big thing that's missing, that we're not going to recognize as missing until, a few more days down the road, for sure.
Right.
What about some of the things, a lot of students had planned on big extracurricular events, competitions, you got things like robotics, speech and debate, these things are canceled. How would you recommend, Karen, that students sort of think about supplementing some of the things that have been their hobbies or their extracurricular activities in the past? Is there a way to continue to develop that from home?
I think it depends on what the hobby was to some degree. I think, my kids are all big athletes. And so I think what they're feeling the most, I have a 13, 11, and 7-year-old who play many sports. I think they're missing that team element. And I think that can be hard. And I don't know if there's a total way around that. We take out my son though, and everybody gets to pick a sport each day. So today is baseball. We're going out. We're blessed to have a big field right by our house, and so we're all playing family baseball. And Charlie is my 11-year-old. He's going to be practicing his pitching, because he's a pitcher and a catcher, so he's going to be doing that. We bought him. Thank God for Amazon too. I think about people. When this kind of thing happened, and the Spanish flu, nobody's watching Netflix or ordering a baseball bat on Amazon. So everybody should probably quiet down about complaining. But we have a baseball thing we bought for him so we can hit it and it can, teach him how, whatever. So I think sports can be great, especially since it's spring. It's not going to be the same thing. But as a family, like I said, find the opportunity. We would never have had time to do this before, right? Because now, guess what? 5 o'clock, I'm not carting anybody to a baseball game and trying to figure out how to also get my daughter to swim team practice. And so I'm trying to really embrace that part of it and say, okay, guess what? We're all going to go play basketball in a family, and we're 5, so it's 2-on-2, and my 7-year-old just decides to block whoever she wants to block. And, so we're trying to do it that way. We're still practicing cello, much to my 11-year-old's disappointment. He was like, wait, I still have to practice cello. I'm like, yes, you still have to practice your cello. But there's like a great, there's 15 different operas I know that the Met Opera is putting on. So if your kid is into that kind of thing, there are a bunch of plays. If your kid is a drama person, obviously that's not happening. But talking about, there's 15 different Broadway plays that they can watch online via Playbill. And then Mo Willems, for example, for my 7-year-old, who was a huge Elephant and Piggy fan, is doing 1 o'clock. He's actually the artist in residence at the Kennedy Center, and he is doing 1 p.m. sketch dailies. He gets online, he shows them your office, he shows them how he, sketches Elephant and Piggy. And even my 13-year-old actually enjoyed that. She loves to draw, and she was a big Elephant and Piggy fan. And it's kind of a universally good. If you're remotely into drawing, doodling, writing, that's 30 minutes every day that we do with Mo Willems. So,
yeah, my
I
kids
think
did that
you got to
yesterday
find the
too.
opportunities where you can.
They love that. They thought it was really, really great.
Yeah.
Beth, you asked specifically about summer. You mentioned summer, and I wanted to know if you had some thoughts about, some of these summer programs where you're going to live on a campus, you're doing some sort of enrichment. Is there replacement for that? Are there ways to get access to coding or to do some sort of summer project, like that kind of thing from home the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, I mean, just one other thing that we've done here is I'm having my son keep track of everything he's doing during this whole coronavirus downtime, because some of that might end up ultimately on his activities sheet. So that's one thing that I do encourage families to do, is keep track of what you're doing. All of it might not be relevant. Some of it might be. In terms of the summer, I do think it's fair to assume that some of the things, or many of the things even, that people have planned aren't going to happen as planned. So I've encouraged all my students who were potentially going to be going. So I have a student who was going to work out of a lab at MIT. It may still happen, but if it doesn't, she and I have talked about a plan B and doing some work for a program that she has worked for the past couple of summers, doing another project for them. It's not exactly what she wanted to do, but she could do it from her home. Yeah. In my son's case, was going to do an immersion program. We may do some more intensive on the French language side. There are free courses on Coursera. edX is another great place where you could look for things like that. My son's really into cooking, so I purchased an online knife skills class for him to take. And then there are others in that series. So I think that the really important thing for everyone to keep in mind is that we are all in the same boat. So it's not like your kids are doing something not interesting and everybody else is out there doing exactly what they were going to do. Pretty much nobody is doing what they were going to do. So that's the good news.
Including me. Yeah,
exactly.
Me too.
Yes.
One more thing I wanted to ask you both, and we've just got a little bit of time here, but we are obviously admissions counselors by profession. We work with students and helping them with their college applications. How much are you thinking about students starting their college essays now?
A lot.
As opposed to the fall? Do you think that that's something that students should really be thinking about and prioritizing? Is it if you don't have anything else to do, think about, like, what would you recommend? I'll take one recommendation from each of you before we jump off. Beth, why don't you go first?
I would say that for the most part, I do think you should be working on those essays now, because we don't know what's going to happen this summer. Who knows if school will be in session over the summer or something crazy like that. So probably not, but I think now is the perfect time for juniors to be getting their Common App completed and their essays written.
Karen, what about you?
Agreed. I think if nothing else, and again, you've got downtime. This is always the hard. I mean, this will be no easier come senior year, even if we had been in a normal world where it's, and this may be a particularly abnormal world come senior year, because maybe you'll be making up things like AP tests that you did. Who knows? Again, I try not to predict or assume I have any clue, because if you'd asked me a week ago if we'd be here, I would have said no. So here we are. So I'd say yes. And I think common application for sure. The UCs have already said also that their essays are what they are. So you already know what those are. So if you have any common app, coalition app allows for topic of choice, even though they haven't given their new essays, and the UCs have all their essays published. If you know you're applying to a school of any of those, there's absolutely no reason for me why you wouldn't have started those.
Yeah.
So get going on those essays. I think that's a great idea. This has been awesome. It's great to see you both.
Yeah,
nice.
Even though we do work remotely, I think there's something about this connection that is really nice. So I want to thank you both for coming on and talking through some of this stuff.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys.
Of course. When we come back for our second segment, we're actually going to be talking to a current senior who is in the midst of making decisions about where to go next fall, in the midst of all of this. So you won't want to miss that segment. Thanks.